Why is the church important today? Well, I think it's true that there are many people who have very underrated understandings of the church or a lack of appreciation for it. And yet here at Providence, we continue to maintain the importance, particularly of the local church of Jesus Christ. And why this is because first and foremost, the church is not an institution of man. But when we look at the New Testament, what we see of the church is that it is characterized as the building, as the body, and as the bride of Jesus Christ. And so the church is first and foremost of the utmost importance because the church itself is very, very important and it is precious to Jesus Christ himself. But what we also see in the New Testament is the pattern of the way in which the churches were conceived and the way in which they were understood. The first thing that we note about the pattern of the church in the New Testament is that it was always a seen body of believers. This is why we read, particularly in the book of Acts, that wherever the word of God was faithfully preached and people came to confess Christ, that there sprung up local communities or churches within the book of Acts. And we see that this is only further evidenced by many of the New Testament letters that Paul or the other writers wrote to specific churches in specific areas. That the church wasn't some sort of incorporeal entity, but that it was one that was visible. It is one that is seen of a gathering of people together. The second thing that we note about the pattern of the New Testament church is that not only is it seen, but that it is also a community in which we are to actively and regularly participate in. You can see from the evidence of the New Testament that the early church Christians participated regularly, weekly, and potentially even twice on the Lord's Day in gathering together as the Lord's people in a specific location. Here at Providence, we don't believe that to be a Christian is to be a spectator, but that it is to be actively engaged and participating in this community, and particularly in public worship. The author of Hebrews, actually speaking to believers in the first century, encouraged them and said, "Do not forsake the gathering together, as some are in the habit of doing." And so at Providence, we strongly encourage this, particularly in public worship as we gather to worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. But the third thing that we note about the pattern of the New Testament church is that it was also known by the communities in which they lived. That is, that those in the cities and in the locations knew of these particular churches as they gathered. Now, we're very thankful that here in the United States, that by God's grace, that the church isn't living in the underground, that we don't have to fear and that we're not hiding and jumping from house to house, but that in our country and in our cultural context, that we have the joy of being known by those who are outside of our community and outside of our church. And yet, it's important that we understand what it is that we ought to be known for. And we believe that the early church, that what they were known for as the church as they gathered together, as we read in Acts chapter 2, is that these Christians were committed to the apostles' teaching, that they were committed to the fellowship, that they were committed to the prayers, and that they were committed to the breaking of bread. And so here at Providence, we continue to stress not only the importance of the church, but also that we be known for the right things and that we are committed to those things that God himself has called us to be committed to. And so for these reasons, and of course we could give many more, we continue to confess that the church is of the utmost importance, not only because it is important to Christ as his building and body and bride, but also because it is integral to our life of faith as Christians in this world.